provocations, and we know that your context is different. All of our schools' contexts are slightly different. But one of the things that I saw and that resonated with me, I think we all agree that it's tough to unlearn the entire educational process, which has got us here today, by rethinking our approach to certain aspects on how students learn is a good first step. So I think a lot of you would say you weren't going to build the same school that you have now, or that you are open to all the suggestions, but there's still a lot of work to do beforehand. And that is the work that we are talking about. One of the other comments that that resonated with me is you would say that you wouldn't build a private school under the kind of using these curricular ideas of core competencies, big ideas, kind of that open-ended type ideas. I want to give you two, and I'll put them in the chat piece, but it's altschool.com and conlabschool.org. Those are two private schools that are basically doing our provincial curriculum exactly how it's supposed to be done. I mean, they're doing inquiry, project-based, and students are paying $40,000 a year, US dollars, a year to attend. And they are created by the Khan Academy, and I think that's fairly popular. And the alt school is creators were Silicon Valley guys, right out of Silicon Valley, which is where the first school is. They're taking our concepts from our curriculum and making a ton, altschool.com, thank you, and Con Lab School, all one word. Did I grab yours? Yeah. Labschool.org. And again, that just gives you an indication that they're doing it in the private sector, as in terms of private schools, what we're trying to do slowly in the public sector.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I gave the links to Liz to type in the chat.
Yeah, so thank you, Liz. So we're adapting, and we're being very adaptable today because challenges that happen, which is what we know school life is like for all of you as well. Things come our way that we're not expecting, and you adapt and make adjustments to try to move forward and meet everybody's needs. So again, reading through the responses from last week, and it was interesting, most of you said you wouldn't start with the current school, but a few of you actually said you would, and then make some adjustments and changes, building on what you thought was valued and important to the culture of the school you're in, and then making the shifts around meeting the needs of the learners. And I think, how do you check in and how do you find out whether or not you're actually having success? Because, and a couple of you made the point of really saying you connected with us talking last week about teaching is very different than learning. So we can measure teaching, and delivery of content is very different than assessing and evaluating whether learning is actually occurring, and ownership around learning. The other was that really connected with me. A couple of you talked about, the only thing that's harder than starting something new is stopping something that's old or been around. And we know that resistance to change is just such a big part of, I think, for a lot of people, human nature, as well as our school cultures. But then finding those commonalities, those things that resonate. And a number of you really talked about not trying to do too many things in the area of change at once, picking an area that resonates, and then having the willingness to look and reflect and be honest about how that change is going. And that's where that underlying relationship and trust with the leadership is key to move any type of change forward. And a number of you talked about that underpinning that is really that trust factor in the leadership in the school for people to feel safe to try new things and to go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. Andrea, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, I was just so excited today because I actually ticked 4 things off my list. And they're actually complete and off my list. And at this time of year, I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. That's a pretty tough thing to do. But I got an hour and a half uninterrupted, which I just felt blessed to have. And I would wish that for everyone.
So that's why Andrea's smiling a lot more today. So we're very happy. That sense of completion, especially at this time of the year, is almost never happens. So it's great that she had that. And Peter's got an exciting morning at his school. Maybe he can share that a little bit later, just so people know. He's got a lot of people setting up to be live at his school on CBC tomorrow. So we're all excited for him, and it's a great opportunity for his students and staff and his district to be highlighted on CBC here. So we want to just quickly review the leadership standards, the three main ones that we've been talking about. We know there's a fourth one. Share us. We know there's the fourth one, organizational leadership, which we're not ignoring. We're going to integrate that more because it kind of overlaps a lot of the other leadership standards when we're together in the summer. But we're going to each take a moment just to kind of highlight the key messages we were emphasizing over the last three sessions in terms of the leadership standards. So relational leadership, instructional leadership, and ethical leadership. So I'll start first, and it's just a quick overview, but be thinking about this in terms of your own leadership development and where you are with that, and where you are in terms of that with your current setting or the setting. A number of you are moving into new leadership settings next year. So maybe thinking ahead to what that might look like, because we're going to ask you to verbally share screen by screen, each of you, which of these resonates the most with you right now and why, just as a little check-in and be able to hear all your voices and connect with you a little more individually today. So with that, the relational leadership, and I think we mentioned that we made that first because we really know that those relationships developed as a leader are the underpinnings of everything you do in the school. And without an understanding and awareness around that, it's really hard to move forward around instructional leadership and ethical leadership. And in the key belief statement that we talked about and we shared in the first session was that as a principal or vice principal, it's your responsibility for effectively influencing the culture of that school around relationships that support student learning and support adult learning. And I think that's the really key message. And in the standards, it's broken down into 5 different standards. But some of the key words that we talked about and discussed and you reflected on was that importance of, as a leader, as a principal or vice principal, to be self-aware and to know your own qualities around leadership, and also to support those positive relationships to build a culture of integrity. So that was one of the key focuses. In terms of the second standard, it was really about establishing those effective relationships. So not just positive, but moving towards effective, so that you're actually influencing and improving the learning environment for the students as well as for the adults in the school. And that includes the community. It's not just about, which we've talked about in our previous sessions. It's not just staff and students. It's the parents and the outside community. It's also about that cultural leadership, which has to do with sustaining and supporting that climate that supports student and adult learning. So are you in a school environment and climate where people feel they can talk and reflect and share and try new things and be moving forward in that learning? Is it safe to do that? Is it respected to do that? Are they encouraged and supported to do that? And then the community building, which we talked a lot about in terms of, we know that you have many challenges in a lot of your locations due to 2 schools on one site, very traditional cultural school influence with you embracing the BC curriculum and the challenges that go with that. So part of this role of relationship leadership is how to establish and work with those relationships, but still managing to move things forward in terms of the BC redesigned curriculum. So that's kind of the key messages around relational leadership. So next I'm going to ask Andrea if she could share just some highlights of the instructional leadership.
Well, instructional leadership is really, as the lead learner, you're building that culture of learning. And you're doing that through collaborative practice. And your focus is putting the learner at the center. So all of that instructional curriculum and assessment design is all centered around putting the student at the center. And as the leaders of that culture of learning, we have to be lead learners. And one of the things I wanted to highlight around the instructional leadership are the First People's principles. And that understanding that learning takes patience and time. It's embedded in history, story, and memory. and it's reliant on our intergenerational roles. And so when we're thinking about instructional leadership, how can we weave those principles throughout our lead learning?
Wow, that's good.
Great.
Thanks. All right, so that would be me with the ethical that we did last week. Some people ask which comes first, and with all of these leadership standards, and it's kind of a chicken or the egg type thing. I think they all happen simultaneously. But one thing with the ethical piece is I think it's an inside-out process. I think you have to start and know thyself a little bit and start reflecting, and that's kind of what I saw some of you do in the backbeat, was starting to do some self-reflection and starting to say, okay, the world has changed a little bit, and maybe we have to do a better job of preparing students for the modern world. So once you have that kind of that mindset, then you want to make sure that you're not going to be stuck on the how. So don't get hung up on the how, because even though you are starting to internalize and say, okay, how am I going to have these conversations with my staff? How am I going to really present this to my parents? How am I going to pitch this to my students that they have to all of a sudden take ownership for their own learning? Really, you have to start with the why and work that through. And that sounds cliche, but that really starts you to do the introspectual type inside out process of being able to articulate to your staff, student, and parents why these changes are necessary. And hopefully we can help you through that over the summer and give you some work with all of these leadership standards when you come here over the summer.
Starting with the why.
Well, that's not a novel, but it really, it's building that and communicating that case, almost becoming a marketing person of communicating the case why we have to make these changes. And that's, I think, is a kind of a new thing for us as principals of our schools, that we are no longer just expected to roll over the next timetable and roll over the next schedule and do the same old worksheets and have, you'll see with the new senior curriculum in particular, literally having this conversation with my staff on Monday at our staff meeting, it's different. There's multiple types of English, there's multiple types of math, there's different streams. Why do we have that? Well, we have to dig a little bit deeper into that ethical piece and that moral piece on how our goal is to put the student at the center, and how are we preparing them for the modern world.
So that's a very quick, fast-paced summary, but we've had some time over the last few weeks to go deeper into conversations and engage you in reflections and your thoughts around those. So we'd really like to hear from you now, and I'm not sure how many people we have all together online with us here. But if we could see there's a way to see the screens of everybody. So what we're going to ask you to do is just to respond to the general question, out of the 3 leadership standards, which one resonates the most with you right now, either in your own self-reflection or perhaps with the needs of your current school or your future school? And a brief sentence or two, just because we've had a bit of a late start. We wish we had a bit more time to hear more from you, but we are going to hear from you again later. So if you could just give us a sentence or two about why that's really resonating with you right now, if you were having to pick one of those 3, that would be great. So with that, I'm going to let Brittany start. Brittany was our first and only participant for a while. We were a bit worried because we thought she was going to have to do all the work today. So we're glad to see your colleagues have joined you, Brittany. So Brittany, are you okay to start for us today?
Sure. Good morning to the rest of you. Initially, I was thinking relational leadership because that, especially the school I'm at, really resonated. But then as you were talking about ethical leadership, it so many things you were saying was yes, especially about starting with the why instead of just thinking, okay, how can I change this, this, and this, but thinking about, okay, why do I want to change it? And if I have the why and a strong base, then it will be easier and hopefully parents will accept it more. So that was the one that kind of stood out.
Great. Thank you so much, Brittany. So I think Liz, Jess, if you can just keep a checklist so we don't miss anybody.
Look at the breakout rooms, you
Yeah.
can go down that list.
Yeah.
So
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go, I'm going with the visual screen because that works better for me. So Will, could you share with us sort of what your thoughts are right now based on our quick review?
Yeah, good morning. I like the idea of relational leadership, kind of standing out as the most important for me. Being in China in a different culture, implementing like the BC curriculum, it's a very fine line sometimes with our Chinese colleagues, even with our staff who are here. And I think when you build that positive school culture, those positive relationships, it's one of those things that helps retain staff, but also helps obviously build that bridge or that gap between two really different cultures. And for me, it's gone a long way. It's made my job easier, and I know it's helped with our teachers as well. They're a lot more positive, and they've stayed a lot longer as a result.
Mm-hmm. So that, longevity and retention of teachers, that's a big issue everywhere. BC for sure, especially in the area of French immersion.
Right.
And so having those connections and relationships and feeling like you fit and you're valued really can go a long way to help. And then you've got people to keep building on over time. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, Will. Graham, would you be willing to go next?
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, so as you were all reviewing the different leadership standards, it's really hard to just choose one. They're obviously all important, but something you said there, Denise, was that the other ones tend to be based on the relationships. And I fully agree with that unless you've got those relationships, unless you build that trust, you won't be able to have the effective influence on people and be able to affect that change. So I definitely agree that that's the one that I've been really focusing on with my leadership style. And the biggest challenge I've had is that really effective relationships take time. So, relationships, time spent is relationships built. So, and as we all know, time is a precious commodity. So it's something that you really have to set aside time for and make a priority.
Great. Thank you. We were talking about that before we went on, that how everybody just wants a minute of your time, but we all know that if we don't make ourselves available to people when they do want to connect with us or share with us or ask a question, every time if you don't respond, that's a missed opportunity for building that relationship or engaging that relationship. So we all need double the time that it requires to do the job. That's for sure, if not triple. So thank you, Graham. Thanks for your thoughts. Kyle, would you be willing to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I have to agree with everyone before me, but Will and Graham, about relationship leadership. For me, if I think about as an administrator, what do I do in my day? I interact with students consistently. I interact with parents consistently. I interact with other BC administrators. I interact with different Chinese colleagues, Chinese teachers, Chinese counselors, Chinese administrators, and I interact with parents. And that's the foundation of the job, and getting all those working relationships together.
Right, and it's never ending, right? It's a big part of your day, and it is sort of the basis by which other conversations around ethical decision making and also your moral compass and also instructional practices is. If there isn't a relationship there, it's much harder to be able to get those honest reflections. Thank you very much, Kyle. Taylor, would you be willing to go next?
Yep. Good morning.
Morning.
Following the theme of relational leadership, I think that's the one that I've kind of felt the most this year. Coming into a new school as a new administrator, I had to work pretty hard to establish myself into the new community and be a trusting member with both the Chinese and the BC teachers. And I think working really hard on that throughout the first semester has allowed me to start implementing some effective changes at our school for policies, and I'm hoping that it'll transition next year as we work really closely with all of our staff to really implement the full BC curriculum for grade 11 and 12 as well.
Great. And does it look like you'll have a lot of your same staff next year? Will that allow you to build?
Yeah, we have most of them are returning, about 80%.
Oh, that's great. Good. So good baseline of relationships to keep working from. So that's great. Thank you so much. I see lovely Peter's face, but we're going to skip Peter and go to the other Peter. Peter, would you be willing to share next?
Peter.
Peter N? There you are. Morning.
Morning. A little bit of a broken record here, but like we're all working on the same company except for Will and Maple Leaf. Relationship leadership, I think, is one of the most important ones because like with that relationship, you're able to find people to help you to fill in the gaps. Like if you have any weaknesses. One of the first things we learned coming to China, that relationships were the things that kind of drove and make things happen. So again, just like others that have commented before, like I've worked really hard to develop a relationship with, like say, like the counseling team, the Chinese admin, and if you don't have a good relationship, if you don't have a good, if others' opinions of you are not very good, they're able to shut down your ideas and initiatives. So relationships is very important. Yeah,
it's that trust in what you have to say, or them feeling safe to share ideas with you. I love the thoughts of filling in the gaps, but to me, that's about building capacity and the people you work with. It's not just about filling in what you might not have. It's actually giving other people a chance to share their talents and their leadership, and have shared leadership when you have other people involved with you and being a leader in the school. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't forget Saruthi's with me.
I won't forget. I see Saruthi's name down there, but I'm going to move on to Cheryl next. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning. I'm going to go with relational as well at the moment. In the past couple of years, a lot of it's been ethical, talking through with our Chinese colleagues on certain ethical issues. But right now it's relational in getting up to speed with the new curriculum, with bringing in understanding with our Chinese colleagues and having a good relationship with them, where they trust me, makes it possible for then the parents who trust the counselors and the Chinese admin to trust that we're actually going in a good direction too.
Thank you. And it's the reciprocal understanding, you understanding their cultural focus, their beliefs, as well as you asking them to in turn understand yours. So with that reciprocity, which comes from strong relationships, then you have an opportunity to maybe challenge some of the thinking or some of the structures that may not be meeting the needs of your learners in the best way. So it's a place to start. Thank you, Cheryl. Steve, good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Thank you.
I think I would have to agree what Cheryl was indicating as well. Often instructional and ethical issues and demands are maybe a priority, but if you don't have the relational situation being conducive to a good environment, the last two can't be addressed. From my point of view, I think relational development is always morphing from one day to the next, and the key is developing a sense of trust. And in China, that can be a little bit challenging at times. But for me, I think an honest approach is the best way. But trying to get tohonesty and a direct honesty from say my Chinese counterparts can be a challenge. I have very few issues in the sense of my colleagues from overseas, because we seem to kind of come from the same kind of culture. But again, to develop that trust, we have to respect, say, the Chinese culture, and to market ours and to sell ours. So that's my input for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. And what I'm getting the sense of is those relationships with your counterparts, especially when you have two schools in one, is something maybe here in BC, you build it with your current community, and then you kind of have it established. It sounds like it's more of a daily, ongoing building and rebuilding from what a number of you have indicated, that it's a little less, I don't know what the right word is, consistent perhaps. So you can't just assume that everything's where you thought it was. You need to be kind of keep working on it. I see Lucille nodding and building on it, because that is the underpinning relationships, but you can't just assume they're there. You have to be actively working on them and checking in around them. So thank you for that, Steve. Brett, good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to, I think, go in a little bit of a different direction than everyone else, and focus on the ethical leadership piece. I think whenever we've talked a little bit about changing things or doing things differently or doing this or that, and it always comes down to, is this good for students first and foremost? Is this good for teachers? And overall, is this good for our school? That plays heavily into the relationship piece as well, because that's a high leverage thing that gets people on board with what you're doing. If this is good for students and good for our staff and good for our school, then that will be a relationship building piece in and of itself, and it will often get you moving in the right direction. So even if people don't fully agree with it, or it doesn't sit well with their values, they can still understand it and still contribute in a meaningful way.
It's a really interesting way to start those conversations too, around what is it we believe, what is it we value, what do we think is good for kids and our community. And so you can learn a lot about each other, which naturally will help build relationships as well. So very important part. Thank you, Brett. Lucille, good morning, Lucille.
Canada.
Lucille, we're not hearing you very well. If you can maybe adjust your mic or get a little closer. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, my face would be so big right now.
No, you're perfect. Thank you.
Well, I am more into being an instructional leader, because I like the idea of leading a culture of learning, since we are bringing in to China a culture that is coming from the Western side, and having a collaborative learning process where everyone can grow together. Especially we're doing the redesigned curriculum, and Chinese teachers and staff are not well aware of it. And how am I going to lead for everyone to learn how we are moving forward to this new thing, for everyone to be on the same boat? So as we build relationships, I feel like I am responsible for making people grow around me. And as we grow together, there'll be more ongoing conversations on how we have to meet in the middle, meeting their culture and the culture from the Western side, because we always stick to one team, one goal. But realizing that the others don't know what they're doing is something that is a big challenge. Relationship, yes, will be built when everyone feels empowered and supported and well-informed.
Great. Thank you, Lucille. And that instructional leadership is a huge part of the moving forward with the BC redesigned curriculum, and so important, because it really is about talking about changing practice in so many levels. So really important. So Ruthie, I know we can't see you. We think you're connected to us though. Hopefully you can, we can see you now. Awesome. So Ruthie, can you let us know what's resonating with you? Good morning.
Good morning. I would say for me,
Because of Peter's.
It's because of Peter's, yeah.
I think because Peter's is on, but let's see. That's why we're getting some.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback.
Just turn your sound off, Peter.
Peter's sound is off now, I think.
No, his mic's off.
Oh, his mic is off, but maybe all your sound has to go off, Peter, so we can hear Saruthi.
Yeah.
hello?
That's perfect. Great.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to agree with Brett on this one with ethical leadership, because I think we're at a phase in our system where we're bringing about a lot of drastic changes in terms of curriculum. And that goes without saying that there needs to be a lot of justification behind that. So starting with the why and getting people to realize that there is a purpose behind this, and getting people to share the same vision as you to implement change, I think is important at this time in my leadership.
Right. Great. Thank you, Saruthi. We're so glad you and Peter are tag teaming so we can have both of you part of our group today. So thank you for that. Good teamwork there. Good partnership. So I hope I didn't miss anyone. Is there anyone that I've missed from the pictures? I think I've got everyone who was able to log on today. So again, we're missing a few people, I'm sure, due to the
Should be good.
okay. So thank you so much. It's really great to hear your voices as well as hear your thinking. So we appreciate that. So the next phase of the session, we have about 25 minutes left because we know your day is just getting started.
50.
25.
We're going to go down to 15 because we started late at 10.
Yeah.
Oh, it's up to you.
Let's keep going.
Okay, so we're going to do our best we're trying to stay within the time frame of the hour presentation, and we know we started a little bit late. So we're going to ask you to work in a small group, and we're hoping that the Zoom platform has helped to organize you into groups. And the focus of this is to allow you to have a little bit of a direct conversation with 3 or 4 other people in the room in your small group around some of the key topics to do with the redesigned curriculum. And that came up from us reviewing all of your backbeat channels and the conversations we had. And the format we're going to ask you to use, and are there 3 people in a room or?
There's 4 in each.
Okay.
In one.
Okay, 4 in each room, it looks like. So there's a breakout room 1, breakout room 2, and 3. And so basically, many of you probably know the cooperative learning sort of structure or format of how people can work in a cooperative group to make sure that everyone has a role. And so when you're in your breakout rooms, I'm going to ask if one of the people in the group of 4 would be the facilitator. The facilitator is the person that just reminds everyone what the focus of the conversation is and keeps the conversation moving so everyone has a chance to speak, and that it's done so in a way that everyone's ideas are respected, which I know will be the case with all of you. Second, that somebody records kind of just the key messages about what the group's talking about, not like full long paragraphs, just key messages. Third, that someone agrees to be the reporter, and that's the person that will share out with the other groups when we get to that point. And the 4th person is important, which is the timekeeper. So for the topics, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to talk in your groups and then come back and report out. So the recorder is going to be very important to the reporter, and the timekeeper really keeps the group on, like we have 5 minutes left to make sure that everything's moving along. So hopefully you're somewhat familiar with those roles. And if time allows, we'll try to get you to talk about more than one topic, but we're going to be a bit short on time, so we'll see how that goes. So with that, everyone hopefully, can you all see what breakout room you're in through the Zoom platform? Mm-hmm. Can you just do a thumbs up if, Yep. Okay, excellent. So Peter and Andrea are going to sort of lead you through the actual discussion focus. And here are the topics. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to use, I think, the whiteboard part of the Zoom platform.
That's at the end.
Oh, that's at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, because of time, we were going to have each of you talk about each of these topics, but maybe we can assign a topic to each of these groups.
Pick one.
Or pick one. I'm just trying to make it, we'd rather have you have more time and go deeper a little bit in your conversation than try to cover all these. So why don't you look at the 3? These came up from all the sessions we've had, and your feedback is really the things that we need to spend more time on, and we will in our summer sessions. So the first part is the core competencies, the curriculum, and content competencies. Second is the assessment goals of the redesigned curriculum and the strategies to support that. And what we've heard loud and clear again today is the cross-cultural relationships and realities of your situation and the parental community building challenges and strategies around that. So hopefully then the facilitator for each group can help your group self-select one of those topics, and then you'll have about 10 minutes to have a conversation with each other. We'll send you a prompt. I think Peter can send you a prompt when there's about 2 minutes left, but the timekeeper will also keep you on track. And then we'll ask for the reporter from each group to share what were the key messages or ideas that came forward with your discussion.
All right. So you should have on your screen, it says the host is inviting you to join a breakout room, whatever, 1, 2, or 3. And I guess you can go to that now and pick one of those topics and have a little conversation with each other for the next 10 minutes. See you in 10.
I'm gonna
I said such a great concluding comments. Oh, I'm getting feedback. So, hello, everybody. Sorry for the bit of an abrupt end to your group. We are trying to honor our planning and content with you today, but realize your day is just starting over there on a Friday. We would like to have about 10 more minutes just to hear from each group some key ideas of the discussion and then wrap it up. Is that workable for you, knowing that your day is getting started? Can you give me a thumbs up if that's okay?
Oh, well done.
Okay, most of you, it looks like. And those of you who have to move on, we understand. So do what you need to do for your school. So with that being said, in group one, who was if you were the recorder, the reporter for group one discussion, can you wave? Oh, it was Will. So Will, can you just highlight for us some of the key, not too long, just a brief, what were some of the key things you talked about? Thank you.
Yeah, group one members were Brittany, Brett, Kyle, and myself. And we just chose the third topic, which was cross-cultural parental challenges and strategies.
There you go.
Everything okay?
Yes, we're great. Thank you. Keep going.
The biggest thing, Brittany's in Colombia, and her challenge is obviously the language barrier in Spanish. And then myself, Brett, and Kyle just talked about Mandarin kind of being a challenge for, talking with parents and even some of our colleagues. So we talked quickly about parent advisory committees or parent evenings kind of throughout the year to give out important information and answer any questions that they may have. Obviously, having a translator, someone who's bilingual, is very important in those situations. Brett had a good point about everything is in dual language. So obviously the local language and then English. That is student handbooks, parent handbooks, policies, procedures, graduation planners, next steps after high school, what are our post-secondary options. So when it's in their first language, it goes a long way. Meetings, having meetings with all the stakeholders in your school so everyone is on the same page. We can't have one message going out from counselors that's different than ours and vice versa. So making sure everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. And then at the end, we talked about using current or past students. So past graduates to come back and either do a speech to the graduating class, your current grade 11s or your grade 10s, or as you move through the years, have a grade 11 talk to the current grade 10s, or have a grade 12 talk to the current grade 11s. And we think that's kind of a good way for them to answer any questions or overcome any, issues that they have moving forward. That's kind of what we talked about.
That's great. And listening to you, we have so much to learn from all of you about what your realities are and what your challenges are and how you're adapting and moving forward. So we know you're going to learn so much from each other, not just through this platform, but when we get to have those 3 days together. So thank you so much for that great summary, Will, and valuable information. So Andrea and Peter we're trying a lot of new things today and hopefully modeling how things don't always go as you planned, but you roll with them. So the whiteboard platform, Andrea is taking notes on what Will's group just discussed, and I hope everybody can see that. But that is part of this platform that we're trying out today. So thank you so much, Will. So for group two, I only see a few pictures, so I don't know how I can see who the reporter was for group two.
Yes.
But
Graham, Lucy, Cheryl, or Taylor.
I asked them just to put their hand up before, but it's either Graham, Lucy, Lucille, Cheryl, or Taylor. If one of you were the reporter for your group, could you turn your mic on and let us know what your group discussed?
I guess I'm the reporter of the group because we have Cheryl as our facilitator and Taylor as the timer and recorder was Graham. So there are a few highlights that we could share from the group. So we chose the second topic about assessments. We all agreed to the idea that there is something that worries the teachers. They're the worries of teachers in maintaining high standards. and how marks or what marks would look like, where we move away from exams and looking for alternative assessments, focusing on project-based assessments, how we are going to look at the accountability of people when we have provincial exams, it kept teachers to be accountable and things are standardized. And at the moment, we haven't seen how the English literacy exam looks like. So what will it look like? Yes, knowing the standards, the requirements of the numeracy exam. It isn't clear on how we are going to prepare our students, especially when we have the bridging and foundation students that will have to take the numeracy exam for grade 10s.
Right. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Lucille.
And sorry, and to wrap it up is how we are going to design our assessment weeks instead of giving exams.
Yeah, how are you going to use that time that's already been set aside in your schedule to achieve these other things? So again, great conversation, and really helps us get better sense of the context of what you're talking about and thinking about and working with your staff about. So now, thank you so much, Lucille, for reporting out. And the final group, group 3, I don't have the names up there. So if the person who was the reporter for group 3 could turn their mic on and tell us who was in your group. So that was Peter, Steve, and Saruthi.
Okay.
Did. Are one of you with us? Or did they have to go?
How did I lose it?
So Saruthi,
Steve looks like
Steve.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve.
One of those days, 1,001 things happen.
No, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I kind of jumped in with a kind of a situation regarding a student, and in my group, I had Peter, Edgar, Saruthi, and one other chap I can't remember. But anyways, I'll talk to you in a moment. Thank you. Sorry, but again, the topic was about cross-cultural, I guess, issues and development and dealing with parents, and I guess as a follow-on with another Peter's, advice giving, starting from an ethical point of view, especially the questions, how is this good for the school? And in particular, how is this good for our student or the student? And Peter was drawing on these extracurricular activities and basically getting parents to buy into what we're trying to do, and discussing how his experience at UBC and how in our culture we demand more of our students to have more integrated skills, and to convince and to demonstrate to parents that we're trying to draw upon the type of skills that these students need to be ready to try to emulate at university. And then other aspects about how to manage these parents' concerns, especially regarding how they see academics as a key part, and how they implemented a tracking sheet for behavior, effort, and homework compliance and things of that nature. That I guess the bottom line is that universities are not just looking for academics, but or just a transcript, but also integrated key skills that make them a whole and rounded person. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Steve. And that's a great close, because that's, I think, what this is all about, is the learner in the center and looking at a fully kind of evolved and developed human being as they move on into the world and become contributing citizens in our culture. So thank you so much for participating. We're down to our last minute. So we're going to wrap up. And Peter's going to share his screen. Thank you very much to Andrea and Peter for trying out the whiteboard and allowing us to have some ways to take notes about your key comments. And we'll have a lot more opportunity on our 3 days together in July, which we're really looking forward to with all of you, to go into these conversations more deeply. So, and thanks so much to Liz and Jess for supporting us with the technology and keeping us on track. So if we could just show the last slide, just to let you know, this is the end of our spring series. So we won't be connecting with you again until we see you in July here in beautiful Vancouver. And we very much look forward to that. And then in those days in July, we'll talk a bit about the fall series and what the focus will be then. So you will get that opportunity to work with and get introduced to Better Educate more formally as part of our summer series, along with going deeper. So we're going to keep going through these slides, Peter. So the key is, I know you know the dates, but just to remind you of the July 10th through the 12th. And the location, all that information I know has been sent to you. And if you haven't received it, please let us know by responding to Anne-Marie so that we make sure we get that out to you. And that Thursday night is our group dinner, which we look forward to socially connecting with you as well. So we really want to hear from you. The spring series has really been intended to introduce you to the standards, but to get to know you a bit and to allow you to connect with each other. So in the Backbeat channel, Andrea has designed the questions that we talked about, and they'll be coming out to you through Anne-Marie tomorrow.
They may have them.
No, I sent them to us.
So she sent them to Anne-Marie, and they're going to come out to you tomorrow. So if you don't see anything from Anne-Marie, please email her if you can. Well, it's Saturday for you, tomorrow, maybe Monday. And let us know so we make sure you get them, because we really want to hear back from you. How did these sessions work in terms of the way we formatted them and the process we used and the way we delivered the content? Because we want to meet your needs and we want it to be engaging and valuable for you. And also, what's really important for us, we've been already starting to plan the summer. We want to hear, what are you really hoping for from those 3 days together? What are maybe your top 3 priorities? Again, we don't want you to write us a long script. Just key ideas and messages would be great. But we encourage all of you to, if you could, to respond to the Backbeat channel questions.
And if you're having a hard time with the Backbeat and you're having a hard time with Better Educate, the questions have been put in the email as well, and please just email us back, any one of us or all of us. And I've been the one that's collating all of the Backbeat channels, so if you send them to me, for sure, I'll make sure that they're inputted, because I can input them for you.
Great, thank you, Andrea. And there were a few slides we went through quickly that have some quotes around what we've been talking about, and they also have some links where you can go to support your learning if that's of interest. So we'll post them just like Anne-Marie has done in the previous session, so that'll be available to you to have a look at if that's of interest to you. So wonderful to see you all. Thank you for your patience with the technology and the lack of communication at the beginning, and we really enjoyed hearing your voices today. So have a wonderful year end, and we really can't wait to welcome you to Vancouver. Bye, everybody. Have a great Friday.
Listen to CBC News.
Yeah, CBC. Peter's on CBC at
Vancouver Morning Edition.
5 a.m., some ungodly hour. So, yeah.
Might not be for them.
Yeah, that's true. Might be afternoon for you. Have a wonderful Friday.